Hi guys, in part 1 I mainly went through the premise, characters and plot of Squid Game, as well as very briefly going into analysis of themes and talking about fan theories. I recommend watching the previous video before this one to get an understanding of where we're leading off from. I realised after making the previous video that I wanted to give the latter two topics more time, so in this video I will be elaborating on already mentioned themes and theories, adding more details that I may have missed, and exploring others not discussed. First, I want to talk about the wealth versus poverty and capitalism themes. Some initial parts of this segment are from the previous script, so the further deep dive flows better. Forgive me if it sounds a little repetitive. The VIPs are the personification of worker exploitation and the mistreatment of the working class / the impoverished. These are immensely wealthy individuals with so much money they can afford to bet massive amounts of cash on life or death games with slim odds which decrease as the games go on. This money is seen as a bearable loss that wouldn't even put a dent in their wallets. The games are used as both a means of additional income by winning bets, but more importantly, a source of entertainment. The thrill of winning a bet is a lesser motivation compared to the thrill of watching others fight to the death due to previously mentioned slim odds. This theme is multifaceted and can comment on many aspects of society, the first being class. The wealth possessed by the VIPs is weaponized against the mostly financially struggling, poverty-stricken participants to coerce them into risking their lives. In everyday life, a few higher-ups reap the rewards and success only through work done by many much lower paid workers. The former owner of Amazon, Bezos, has a 10% stake in an over $1.5 trillion company, while its workers earn $18, around £13.30, and have to pee in bottles due to extremely constrained or non-existent bathroom breaks. Socialist German philosopher Karl Marx stated, "Accumulation of wealth at one pole is at the same time accumulation of misery, agony of toil, forced labour, ignorance, brutality, mental degradation at the opposite pole. How the VIPs benefit and are entertained by the fatal games is metaphorically akin and parallel to how CEOs benefit and are rewarded by the working class individuals in their employment." And I just want to step in here and say, a criticism of capitalism is not support for socialism. I'm Chinese. I'm looking at China right now, and it doesn't look grand. Another possible factor in the selection of participants is assumptions about characteristics of working class and impoverished individuals. While these people may be desperate and have the money weaponized against them, there are certain sociological theories that imply or outright state different socio-economic groups have their own subcultures. Sugarman comments on 4 key features of the working class subculture, the third being instant gratification. This part argues that middle-class individuals are taught by their own pertinent subculture to have delayed gratification, to study, go to university, and to get a good job. On the other hand, working-class people value immediate gratification, leaving schooling as soon as possible to get a job and earn money. In the same vein, many have argued this means that working-class individuals are more prone to risk-taking behaviour, more likely to be impulsive than wait and weigh up the pros and cons of a given situation. While evidence to support this notion is contradictory and non-significant, the perception of working class and lower class people may also explain why all participants are of this standing. The VIPs want an entertaining game with twists and turns, and the socio-economic status of their players, as well as many of them displaying gambling tendencies, may influence their selection. Furthermore, I find it rather interesting that the VIPs that arrive to spectate the last 2 games are all seemingly white, in comparison to all the players being Asian. For the sake of this theme analysis, I'm going to be pushing a little bit of information to the side, as I will be mentioning it in a later theory, and that is international games, because one of the VIPs state that the Korean games this year are the best. However, we don't know for sure whether or not that means there will be, for certain, different countries in the West participating in the games. So there very well could be white players playing in Western countries or worldwide. This isn't a solid fact. We're just looking at Season 1 and the themes and not the theories. So we'll just put a pin in that part for a minute and focus on the fact that in this specific game, they are all Asian participant players and white, rich VIPs. It's no secret that the West and white people in general have in fact colonized parts of Asia and therefore have had influence over Asia in some way, shape or form. There is the British Empire colonizing India, British colonization and imperialism in parts of China. In fact, we can just say Britain has been involved in Asia everywhere. German occupation and imperialization in China, such as the city of Qingdao. In fact, we can just say Europe's been there. I think I've made my point clear. And this has definitely influenced Asia in many different ways if it weren't for white people. Sorry, white people, you kind of did a thing. And this imperialism and colonization has definitely had negative impacts in Asia. I'm mostly going to refer to China as an example in this segment because I'm mostly well versed in Chinese culture and tradition and history. When Europeans first came over to China, they brought with them Christianity, which isn't exactly compatible with traditional Chinese belief. Now, strictly speaking, in Christianity there is a concept of sin, and if you commit certain sins and don't repent for them, you will end up in an everlasting torment that is hell. And so things in Christianity are classified as what is a sin and what is not a sin. Whereas in comparison, traditional Chinese morality is based off of what is duty and what is a vice or a pleasure. Let's take homosexuality as an example. Leviticus, man shall not lie with a man as he would a woman. So, sin. So you have being in a heterosexual relationship is the good thing to do, and being in a homosexual relationship is a sin. In comparison, Chinese culture values duty, and one of the main duties of a Chinese person is to continue their family line. Family names are carried down by the sons, the male children, so it is a duty of a Chinese person to marry somebody of the opposite sex and have a lot of children, preferably sons. If you enter into a homosexual relationship that cannot produce children, it is shameful. So what one should do is first enter a heterosexual marriage and then have as many children as humanly possible. Once you've done that, you've fulfilled your duty and may on the sly be allowed somewhat to secretly indulge in your vices or your pleasure. This isn't to say that homosexuality in ancient China was accepted and should be flaunted about. It was still considered quite scandalous, but you could on the sly do so and it would be tolerated because you've already fulfilled your duty. These are two slightly different ways of thinking about homosexuality as a sin versus a pleasure. One should never ever be done and another may be tolerated if you have fulfilled other higher ranking priorities first. And now look at China. China is now desperate to conserve all Chinese traditions and values as much as humanly possible and reject any Western influences. And I believe this is a result of Western colonization and influence in Asia. Perhaps if colonization and influence had not been pushed upon China, they wouldn't have reacted in this way and retaliated by rejecting outright Western values. Of course, the example of homosexuality and differing beliefs aren't the only examples of ways that Western colonization and influence has harmed Chinese people. I'm just using it for this video. Perhaps if China had been left to progress organically, they wouldn't have this uptight authoritarian government stance. They may have just progressed like the rest of the world. It's completely natural to want to be as far away from something that has been forced upon you against your will. And I believe that's why China is the way it is, and why it hasn't managed to go forward in any way, shape or form in regards to its human rights. By no means am I saying that this is the reason that China is the way it is. I think it is one of the reasons why China is the way it is. So, in regards to Western colonization and imperialism and influence within Asia, it's an interesting contrast, seeing these VIPs watching these marginalized groups be forced into these life or death games for their amusement, the same way that The West originally came over to Asia for their resources and their own benefit. Leading into the next theme, let's discuss our role in Squid Game, us, the audience. While we may continue to watch the show for the plot and characters, most of us were initially drawn in by the brutal nature of it. We saw a program revolving around deadly games in which people suffer. We are the VIPs. In our world, there are many ways in which we participate in the same behaviours as they do. We watch shocking and horrific news from true crime to natural disasters in the comfort of our own homes. We tune into shows like Jeremy Kyle and Dr. Phil that rely on telling the stories of those lesser off than us, whether that be financially, socially, emotionally, mentally, or physically. Jeremy Kyle in particular was known for taking struggling working class individuals, many with substance misuse and gambling issues, and parading them around for the middle class to gawk at. Schadenfreude is a German phrase deriving from the words Schaden, damage or harm, and Freude, joy, and is the experience of pleasure, joy, or satisfaction that comes from learning of or witnessing the troubles, failures, or humiliation of another. The word first coined in the 1740s, it has since been studied as a phenomenon. González Gadea in 2018 conducted a study that revealed that Schadenfreude is higher in real-life situations compared to hypothetical ones, theorizing that the closer physically and emotionally is something to a Schadenfreude scenario, the greater pleasure gained. Cesaroni et al. 2020 identified 4 types of Schadenfreude: aversion, injustice, and image, with its subtypes compensation and identification Schadenfreude. It is a real and observable occurrence that can be identified and researched. While shocking scandals and terrible news aren't comparable to life or death games, it is a form of Schadenfreude. Even if they aren't real people, we're still celebrating the end for some characters, while immersed and invested in the show. It's now time to theorize. Like some of the previous points, some of these theories were also in my first video. However, I intend to elaborate and explore them more and add newer ones, so bear with me if it does sound a little repetitive. First, let's talk about a couple of theories that I don't consider theories because they're somewhat a given or confirmed. The theory that the deaths were foreshadowed. Reddit user Faraday's Foot pointed out that the characters' deaths were foreshadowed in the days they temporarily left the game. Deok-soo jumps off a bridge while avoiding casino employees and is yeeted by being pushed off the stepping stone bridge. Se Byok threatened a man with a knife and is stabbed by Sang-woo. Ali stole money from his boss and is yeeted after Sang-woo steals his marbles, and Sang-woo tries to end his life in a bathtub wearing a suit and is yeeted while it's raining, also wearing a suit. It's a really good analysis, but some people have taken this as a theory, but it's not really a theory, just clever writing. Another theory is that there are worldwide games, as a VIP comments that the South Korean games are the best that year. As I stated in my previous analysis point, while this does somewhat confirm there may well be other games, it doesn't necessarily say that they're worldwide. They very possibly could be worldwide. I'm putting this down as not a theory because the VIP somewhat confirms that there's other games, but doesn't necessarily say that they're worldwide. Like, he could just mean that this is in Asia, like these are Asian games that are being played. So that's the theory part. We know there are other games, but we don't know exactly where they're being held, which is why my previous analysis point still holds true. Now, let's delve into the yet-to-be-explained theories. While the circles, triangles, and squares look like PlayStation buttons to me, fans think it signifies the guards' ranks. Circle is a worker, triangle is a soldier, and square is a manager, theorized as Jun-ho, while wearing a square mask, is expected to lead a group of triangles. As well as this, when using the Korean alphabet in Hangul, the 0 becomes an O, the triangle becomes part of a J, and the square becomes an M, which are the initials of Squid Game in Korean. Ojing-eo Geim, OJM. I'm sorry for the Korean. Very sorry. Moving on, guards have been speculated to not be willing accomplices. The one time we see a guard's face, or one of the few times we see a guard's face, not counting the one that Jun-ho encounters, it is a young boy. He doesn't seem to really want to be there and seems quite scared. As well as this, they aren't allowed to show their faces, and this doesn't seem to be because they don't want to. It's bizarre. Why can't they show their faces? The theory goes that the Dakji card game chooses whether they will be a player or a guard. Gi-hun chooses the blue card and ends up being a player, and all the players have bluish-green outfits. What happens if you choose the red card, because the red is very much like the colour of the jumpsuits that the guards wear? Some believe that previous winners go on to be guards. Perhaps Frontman started off as a guard and then was promoted to be Frontman. He was the winner of the 2015 game. Others believe that the participants who left after round 1 and did not return are the guards. The Frontman told a guard to monitor those who left and never returned. Why would you need to monitor them? The banker does refer to Gi-hun as a VIP, so maybe winners become the VIPs. The involvement of Ga-yeong's stepdad in the games has also been considered as a possibility. Boy posted on Reddit that he's a wealthy man and has recently got a job in America. He speaks English, and so far in the series, the frontman and the VIPs are the only ones who have shown that they can speak English, aside from Jun-ho. Husbando can do everything. There are also constant references to America in the music that Frontman listens to, Fly Me to the Moon. Or perhaps the stepdad was even paid to go to America and/or say that Gi-hun can't see Ga-yeong again to convince him to play the game. They monitored those who didn't return, and they were ready and prepared with a card for Sang-woo to call when he was about to end his life. Were they told to monitor them on the days they left to manipulate their circumstances and coerce them into returning to the game? How else would they have known that Sang-woo was going to end his own life? Did they pay off Ali's boss as well? Because it seems bizarre that a guy who is saying, "Oh, I've got no money, would just leave a wad of money in an envelope for Ali to see. Did they get rid of Se-byok's broker so she would be forced to go back into the games to pay for her parents to be brought back from the board? As well as this, some have theorized that Il-nam is actually Gi-hun's dad. Gi-hun's dad is never mentioned. If he were deceased, surely he'd be brought up. Perhaps he's an absentee dad. As well as this, Il-nam says he has a son and wife, but neither are mentioned or present at his deathbed. He seems to have a lot of love for both of them when talking about them. Why aren't they mentioned or there in some capacity when he's dying? Their numbers respectively are 001 and 456, the beginning and the end. Gi-hun comments he has stomach upset when consuming milk. Il-nam says he bets Gi-hun was spanked a lot as a child. Gi-hun asks how he knew, and Il-nam says his son was the same. Il-nam says his son's birthday is the 24th month, the same birthday Gi-hun guesses for his mother's PIN number, but Gi-hun's birthday is later, stated to be October 31st. Maybe a writing error? However, if the 2nd is the official date, he's exactly 1 week off. The 24th of the month is 7 days before the 31st. Did Il-nam get his birthday wrong or forget it? Just like Gi-hun forgot Ga-yeong's birthday in episode 1. They also lived in similar neighbourhoods as well. And our last one is, Jun-ho isn't dead. He got a very similar wound to his brother who survived. There was no body retrieved or seen on screen, and according to television rules, there is no death. That's all I have time for in this video today. I'm really glad if you came back and decided to listen to me talk about these themes and theories in a lot more detail. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.